I don't want to waste everybody's time, and our objectives are a little bit loose. So for everybody that's here, thank you for coming. This is a posted Board of Health meeting and a legally posted Board of Health meeting. And actually, when the board talked about what we should be doing right now, we had I guess, a mission that said we should be explaining to people where we are with this disease and where we think it's going. And then to try to identify groups of people that are in town that are going to be affected by the disease and its progress. Maybe to see if we could get some quickie steps that we could take, that we think we could take. And, but again, probably to offer the board's resources to people if they're needing help. But where we are, to start off, I've sent out a couple of emails. The last one that I sent out, the last one that I sent out had our latest chart, which is the 14-day rolling average of where the town is, so that it looks at 14-day new cases, and I update it every day. And if you look at where we are, which is the right side of the chart, where our number is, it's up in the upper 60s, which is higher than we've ever seen. As you can see, the next earlier big bump was Christmas of last year. So, but besides being a big number, the slope, the trend is horrible. It says we're on the way to a very bad place. We've got a lot of, obviously, cases in town. What we anticipate is happening is that we will see over the next, because of actually behavior in the next week, we'll have 2 weeks from now, we'll see the Delta strain. This number that we're looking at is Delta. It's affecting people, but rapidly we're going to Omicron. At least the media is saying, and the public health people are saying that certainly by New Year's, maybe by Christmas, Omicron is going to be the dominant variant. We don't know everything about it, except that it's extremely contagious, much more so than the Delta. So what I'm hearing is that we're in a spot that essentially 6 weeks from now, probably everybody who's not vaccinated, it will have had Omicron or Delta here. But so stuff is happening really, really quickly. We didn't want to wait till our next meeting, which is 2 weeks away, and to say, so this chart tells us we're in it, and it's really going. And we maybe have an opportunity to do something. As I thought about it, I said, gee, the vaccinations, that if you're lucky and you convince someone to get vaccinated and you use Pfizer, 5 weeks from now, you'll be vaccinated. And I personally don't know what kind of resistance a brand new, freshly, fully vaccinated Pfizer person has. We certainly hear that a 6-month Pfizer person is 30 to 50% efficacy. So it's not a very good thing, although it does, what we're hearing is saying that vaccinated people aren't going to be very sick from this. But we've got some stuff happening, and we do know that boosters are very effective at controlling this. So as I looked at it, I said our hope here has to be if you control the disease, is to look at to how do you get people boosted and how do you get them to protect themselves? And in a 2 week period, I don't know that we can accomplish even that. But anyways, that's the first thing of where we are. Uh, I I guess I just Herb pushed on me a lot, and he said, let's not start off with just a gripe session or ain't it awful session. Give some structure to it. So I just threw down what I said. Gee, these could be maybe agenda items. Then I went down and said, "I'll maybe break some of those things down and see what people have to say." Uh, Herb, the first item that I have on the list, and it's certainly you're involved with this one, because if it were me right now, I would be doing a mandatory mask, indoor mask, you know, order from the Board of Health. We can do that if we choose to do that. Uh, there are also some other communities certainly communities are doing this right now, but also a bunch of communities are saying outdoor masks when you can't do distancing as well. So that item is one that certainly is on the list. And Herb, why don't you be the one that gives your thoughts, and then maybe we hear something from somebody else.
Well, I don't think my thoughts are terribly unique in this. We have a group of people who are resistant to vaccination, which is the most effective means to deal with this. They're not going to be persuaded by arguments. They would only, in my estimation, be persuaded by dire consequences, like the United Airlines employees. Either you get vaccinated or you get fired. So there has to be consequences. I think we're through with trying to discuss with people who don't want to be vaccinated why they ought to be vaccinated. They don't want to be. So there has to be something that's either positive or negative that they get from being vaccinated. In terms of our town and mask mandates, is the same thing in Amherst and South Hadley and Ludlow and Chicopee and Belchertown, because unless the people around us are doing the same thing, it's kind of whistling in the wind.
However, South Hadley is, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I wouldn't be against public buildings. Public buildings, I think it's reasonable to say you got to have a mask on and mandate it. Can we do that for private businesses? Well, we can, but that's not going to work. So convincing people to get immunized, I don't think is going to work. Convincing people to wear masks is not going to work. I think we have to hope that Omicron really doesn't cause severe disease. It sounds like everyone who's not vaccinated is going to get it, and a good number of people who are vaccinated are going to get it. The data, as I read it, if you've been fully vaccinated and had a booster, your chance of getting severely ill is incredibly low, down in the 0.1 per 100,000 range. But so what? People are taking their last breath And maybe some of them say, well, I wish I would have been vaccinated, but there's going to be others that don't. So, Dick, I don't think it makes a whole lot of difference what I think about this. But I would like to hear what people who have tuned in today think is imperative for our small town of Granby, sitting in the middle of a sea of other towns.
But Herb, as of at least yesterday, South Hadley is going to impose it. Holyoke's going to impose it. Springfield's going to impose it. Northampton has it. And so it's not that we're just sitting here with alone trying to do something.
When you say has it,
Mask mandate.
Mask mandate.
A general mandate for everyone in town.
Correct.
Really? And
The
who's going to
starts tomorrow as well. I was on a blog today with regional council on aging directors, and they're all reporting what's happening, from closing activities to closing to no change. But like Dick said, South Hadley, as of last night, has a townwide mask mandate. Whether it's enforced, I was just in the Big Y at lunchtime. There were plenty of cashiers without masks on, but all the customers had them on. Chicopee's mask mandate starts tomorrow, the 23rd. Northampton, in their Council on Aging, is going to require, starting the 17th of January, that only vaccinated people and workers can come into the center, and vaccinated means including a booster. So that's pretty stringent.
Well, I know Herb said something about enforcement. The police department has no right to enforce it anymore. When the state of emergency ended, cannot be appointed as agents. I think we're setting up the police department, even if we're asking people to masks and they tell us to screw off, people are going to look at the police like they got three heads, and if it's incited, somebody may get locked up disorderly, and then we make the press for the police department doesn't need any bad press over an argument over a mask.
Yeah.
As far as
doesn't mean, Kevin,
Dick, you brought up public buildings. Public buildings have had the mask mandate since you guys never reduced that. It's always been that has stayed in place. When we deal with the public, we put a mask on. When we're out back here in the secured part of the police department, we don't wear masks. We stay away from each other. I've had one incident since I've been chief that I had one officer call me and said he tested positive. We kept him out for 10 days and we've been fine. I believe the same thing happened over on the fire department. So I don't think it's something that we need to change differently in at least our public buildings. I know Steve has been, they've been wearing masks at the school the whole year, and I think they've been doing as well as they can do. And I don't think it's spreading in the schools personally. I think we're doing more testing, and that's where it's coming up. I mean, you go for any kind of procedure and you got to go get tested. I went for a colonoscopy because I hit 50 this year, and I was more petrified about getting a darn COVID test. And I was, and I'm boosted, vaccinated, and everything else. So, but everything turned out fine, obviously. But it's just, I think there's like over testing going on. It's driving up some of these numbers. And Dick, the thing you sent out is a month old. That chart you sent out shows 11/21.
That's the last tag that's on there. That chart is up to date as of today. It's
okay. Well, it's
every single day.
I understand it's up to date, but it looks like the part you sent out's a month old. And I see the addresses. I update them all the time when Colleen sends them to us.
It is not, Kevin. It's not a month old. It is up to date as of actually today's isn't on it, but yesterday's was, and it's updated every
Dick,
single day.
I don't know if anybody else's if you look at what he sent out, the date across the bottom says 11/21, and that's what I'm just trying to ask. It's not.
Yeah, but that's, Kevin, that's a month into it. That's just the last tag that's on the drum. In another day or so, it'll print a date. But that 11/21 is at the base of the second bar into that.
Yeah, it's hard to read, Dick. I'm not disagreeing that the numbers are up. I'm just trying to say that, I think we, as department heads, we need to police ourselves, and the public buildings has not changed anything. We still have mask mandates, and anytime my officers deal with the public, or we go to a person's house or deal with it, we wear a mask. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's just my thoughts on it. I mean, we're doing everything we can. I don't really want to sit here and make people wear masks out behind when we're not dealing with the public. We're in here with ourselves. We don't have any issues. And that's my opinion.
Well, Herb, if you, since we don't have Lee here, we have a quorum, but we don't have a way to adopt this if you and I don't agree. And it sounds like we don't. So our next opportunity is going to be 2 weeks from now. I didn't intend to ask Kevin to enforce a regulation. That was not my intent. But that most people will behave, I believe, will behave properly. And again, at this point, a booster or the mask is it. But if we can't, if Herb, you and I can't agree to it, then that doesn't move forward.
And like I say, I'm not trying to be argumentative. We're trying to put out the point that we can't ask our guys to try to enforce something that we don't have authority to enforce.
Oh, absolutely, Kevin. I don't.
And then I don't want to set up people for recipe for disaster just to say in a common courteous passing, hey, please put your mask on. That's the rules. And then somebody tells them to pound sand, and then people look at the officer and like, well, are we going to do something about it? Well, technically they can't do anything about it.
No, the officer, the police can't. You and I talked about that. You talked with the board about it.
Well, yeah, and I just want everybody here to know that too, that just our authority, when the state of emergency ended in June, so did our authority.
Okay, so it looks like that's not going anyplace. And
Dick, you're saying that we don't agree and so nothing can be done, but I haven't heard you make a motion that you wanted to, in fact, have the board do something. Perhaps I just didn't hear it, but I didn't hear it.
no, I didn't. We typically, when the board works, we know we work in consensus, and before we adopt any kind of an ordinance, that we have it all worked out and talked out before we do it. So that it's, if we don't agree, as I said, there's two of us, so you and I would have to agree. If we were going to say, we certainly have, as Kevin says, what's in place right now is a regulation that for public buildings that will be, including schools, masks will be, well, that's in place. This would be a change to that, and it would be essentially to move back to what we were before we removed the non-publicly owned and controlled buildings. But again,
reference was made to the Big Y earlier. We were at the Big Y yesterday, maybe a little too premature. Lots of people without masks,
Yeah.
Lots of employees without masks, lots of people essentially flaunting it, which is what I said to my wife. There were people who were flaunting the fact that they didn't have a mask on. I doubt that that's going to change. Yeah, I don't think it will. And I don't see how you can make it change without, as Kevin is saying, get us all into a terrible fix.
I'm not sure, Herb, if that's going to be the stand that unless we can make someone do stuff, then we can't attempt to get this better. We can't try to lead this. Then, we ought to all leave. It's just not worth anything, because it turns out that certainly from a Board of Health standpoint, we could use this as a forum to see if we can help other people. I see that one of, for instance, on my list was looking at the Council on Aging and say, is it time to either curtail functions or
Yeah.
make it so that you say that you have to be immunized, and maybe including a booster, because we know that 10% of our old people aren't even vaccinated, and some of those people are going to die from this probably. And as a Board of Health member, I feel really bad about that. And I think that getting all of us together to at least say, should we think about what we could do different or should do different? My second item, for instance, we don't have anybody from the churches, but we've got a big church time coming over the next week, a really big time, with a lot of people that are at-risk people that are coming, some of which aren't married wearing masks in church. Should we, in fact, I don't know. I don't know, Herb. I don't know whether they're saying, nothing matters and let it rip, and who goes down, goes down. I don't agree with
I certainly didn't say nothing matters, Dick. I said it's difficult to force people to do things.
It is.
I believe that's what I said. Maybe I said something different than that, but that's what I think I said. I didn't say nothing matters.
No, you didn't. But you said because you couldn't force them, we shouldn't try to do it. You did say that.
But I didn't say nothing matters, Dick.
So I'm incorrect. I agree. You did not say that.
Thank you. We're not trying to stop all of our people from drinking or smoking or driving too fast or a whole variety of other things. I would love to see everyone be vaccinated and receive a booster, because it's probably the single most important thing that could happen right now.
Certainly, we could try to communicate that. I got to tell you right off, Herb, I feel horrible right now. I feel that we've been doing this for more than a year. We're at a crisis right now. And my belief is the Board of Health has a responsibility to let people know that there's a crisis, and to at least, as I said, with the church, tell the church, tell the ministers that there's stuff right there in case they're not aware of it. And there are some things that they can be doing. Not to tell them they can't go to church, but to tell them how important it is to have masks, to tell them that they should reach out to their congregation and said, just as you say, Herb, without vaccinations, without boosters, it's going to be a dangerous place. But if we just can't come to an agreement on that, we have stuff that's happening in the schools. We have the stuff that's happening with Colleen, that our nursing staffs are in trouble. They're strained to the point of breaking. Is there something that we can talk through and help with? That Colleen can't possibly do the contact tracing when 18 new cases come in a day. And if we go in the next 2 weeks, this thing is going to go crazy if they're correct. And we could try to get in front of this in some tiny way, but
And we have, via our shared services agreement with Northampton, we certainly have tried. And I don't think it's reasonable to not acknowledge that, Dick. We, in fact, are talking with Northampton and asking for their help.
well, from a Board of Health standpoint, then Herb, I accept that we're two people here and there is not a way to get.
Yeah, I'm in. I've been in for the last 5 minutes.
So if that's the case, then we should at least review. I don't know if you heard the issue about whether we wanted to go with a mask mandate for all indoor buildings, Lee.
Yeah, I understand the difficulty of it, which we ran into last spring, and I understand the police's difficulty in not running around every time somebody complains that it's not there. But my sense is that any small percentage that a mask can help is probably beneficial. I know there's a lot of baggage that comes with that, but that's my thought process.
So if that's the case, I'm now going to, I will put out that I make a motion that we adopt an indoor mask mandate and in fact go back to the regulations that we adopted before we rescinded that. Is there a second to that?
I will second that.
All in favor? I am.
I think that we need a little more discussion before voting.
What would you like to discuss, Herb?
I've never stated, Dick, that I was against indoor masks. When you talk about mandating masks in all places, then and outside, then I'm not for that.
And that's not what I proposed.
But that's also not what I was talking about. So I think you're trying to paint me into a corner that I was not discussing.
All right. I certainly can accept that. So we're back to it. Do we adopt the old regulation that we had? And that's what's on the floor. All in favor? I am. Lee?
I am.
Herb?
Yes.
I'll vote yes.
Okay, so Colleen, we'll do that. And when do we want to do it like the last time? We just say it's gonna be effective at midnight tonight, and since there aren't any penalties with it, then we just let the businesses know when they put the signs up again, and we just do that.
I think you ought to add, there's no penalties in that, but there's no teeth in it either. So why don't you say both of those things?
I think there's something in there. I have to dig up the what we had for the last article, and that's the one that I would propose that we do. And whatever those words were. And it didn't involve the police. But it was adopted.
We strongly recommended. I think that's what I remember.
That's when we rescinded the non-public owned. But this one would be the one before that. So the next one on my list, and we can skip over it. Do we want to communicate with churches here that such things as maybe they consider requesting only vaccinated people, wearing masks, distancing, eliminating post-service socializing, maybe look at ventilations through opening doors and windows. Do we want to contact the churches at all? Herb and Lee? I don't think there's anybody from the churches here today.
We've certainly had those kinds of conversations with some churches in the past.
Yeah,
Yes, we
Yeah.
have.
and I
So
think
So we should
go ahead,
we'll
Herb.
get on.
we'd like to do it again. We'd like to re-emphasize it. What are you saying, Dick?
Yeah, do
not-
it again and reemphasize it.
I'm perfectly happy with that.
Lee, are you?
Absolutely.
Okay. So maybe we can have Colleen. Colleen, are you working tomorrow?
No,
Okay. So you want to, each of us take a church? You know what? I'll take all three churches, the three main churches. I'll do that. And I'll do it tomorrow so we can try to get it before Christmas. Herb, you indicated that I'm going to jump out of sequence because you hit on something that's on my list that I'd like not to skip over if we start running into time. You indicated utilization of shared services. We certainly have out there Northampton for tracing. I don't know how Colleen has done with it. We've got something I don't believe that we've asked, and maybe dealing with Meredith O'Leary and asking if, I'm guessing Northampton is going through much of what we're talking about right now with a much bigger staff. Is it worthwhile reaching out to them for additional support? Herb and Lee, what do you think?
The answer is yes. That's what we were awarded a grant for. So definitely the answer is yes.
Lee, do you agree with that?
Yes.
So who wants to do that? Herb, do you want to do that?
I think Colleen has been already communicating with Northampton via tracing. Perhaps not. Have you, Colleen?
yes, I've been sending them cases.
Then I would suggest that Colleen continue to talk to the people she's been talking to in Northampton.
Colleen, are you comfortable with it, asking them if of course, no, you're not going to be comfortable because you're not going to be, if we're going to try to do it before Christmas, you're coming back to work when, Colleen?
Monday, I'll be back on
So
Monday.
maybe Monday, then you could contact them and see, by then that they maybe have got things in place, but to see what they have in place besides the tracing. McDuffie also, has offered that if they can be of assistance to us, that they would be willing to do what we asked if they had the ability to do it. And I don't know, when I've talked to Andrew Parker, when he made that offer, it isn't obvious, Herb and Lee, it's not obvious to me of what resources that McDuffie has that they could help us with at this point. They had offered certainly that if we wanted to put signage on their property to be talking about whatever, whether it's boosters or something, that Andrew had said he would certainly be willing, as a location next to Route 202 with visibility, he'd be willing to allow us to do that. But that's probably not something. There's Herb and Lee, is there something that sticks out at you guys that says, boy, they could really help us there?
There's nothing sticks out to me, Dick. No. They should take care of their own.
Yeah. And they are in fact doing that very well.
And they should continue to do that.
Oh, okay. The ones that we do have that maybe, again, with Colleen being gone, starting, after this meeting, next week, it's going to be an issue as we start to overwhelm people with this disease. What are we backing off of? The issue is, certainly I'm looking at Stephen here, that he's got a staff of people that are gonna, they're gonna get a vacation, but they're gonna be coming back, I think, with lots of activity. But and I guess that's within the school system, but it's specifically Herb and Lee, what are we doing to be looking at Colleen? And Mike, as I wrote down, one of the things to be doing, and maybe it's the same thing Stephen's staff should be doing, is to in some way measure whether, and it couldn't be a soft measure, but when are these people starting to get overwhelmed? Because it's my fear is that these staffs are not going to be able to stop this wave, and to end up with them, throwing their bodies into the fire or the battle and end up losing those people is not in a cause that they can't possibly win. It doesn't seem like something that we want to get into. And from my standpoint, it looks to me like Colleen may end up needing relief and saying, you can't possibly do all this contact tracing. If we just look back 8 months ago, there were 5,000 state employees doing this contact tracing. And to think they're all gone and now there's no consequences of that? What do we do, Herb and Lee?
We're not going to save the state of Massachusetts, Dick. And we're not going to save the population around us either in the state of Massachusetts. Contact tracing.
Go ahead.
Contact tracing has validity, but it doesn't have ultimate consequences. And we are not going to stop the wave, as you said. And the people who are doing contact tracing are not going to stop this new virus. That's just not going to happen. And we know already that fully immunized and boosted people get infected and transmit the virus. They usually don't get terribly sick. So we're not going to save everyone, Dick, by
I
virtue of
agree.
we're going to do the best we can. We have limited resources. We have a large problem. We have a problem that apparently, from my reading, no one has a good handle on how to deal with it. So I'm not sure we should be blaming ourselves, Northampton, Colleen, the state, whomever, with respect to contact tracing. If you want to blame something, why don't you blame public health in general, Dick? It's been totally underfunded for decades in our country.
I'm not trying to,
Underfunded and not respected. So it's difficult for it to resurrect itself in the midst of very tough times.
I'm not seeking to blame anybody. I am trying to avoid burning out some limited numbers of people that we have who are very valuable. And I'm just suggesting that, in fact, what I've read, that once the disease gets somewhere near the transmission gets at this level, that contact tracing isn't particularly effective. You end up needing gross steps to do big things to big groups of people, and that recognizing that if we need relief, it is a spot that we tell Colleen, don't give up your rest of your jobs for the contact tracing, that you do what you can do, and that's all you can do. So that's my suggestion. It sounded like you said the same thing, Herb, that you can only do what you can do. I've got Stephen, you are sitting there very patiently and quietly, but you're on the list that some of those items on my list, that certainly sounds like, from what the governor said yesterday, schools are not going to go remote. But there are things that maybe there are things that the Board of Health could, if they would seem like good ideas, could be helping with. Certainly, if we could help push booster shots for staff, if we could at least ask you what you think of things like Springfield is postponing sports. We certainly see what's happening in the professional sports right now, that this is a spot that the disease spreads. But are those items that we should look at? Are there items that you could say, you know what, whatever gatherings that we have right now, we're gonna limit those? Should you do things like, if you don't eliminate sports, do you do things like saying we're not going to have fans be there? We won't have any people looking at it. Are there? I'd certainly remind people that you put in the schools, we all put work to get good ventilation, good filtration. Is a time to say, gee, on this vacation, we're going to check those things, see if they work. I don't know what there is, and certainly what I have in the bottom of that list is there's an event coming it's coming for, it's especially the public schools and McDuffie, that having these students come back from this vacation is, last year at this time in the public schools, we did special things that we can't do this year. But are there ways that I know McDuffie's is looking at how to, whether they look at quarantines or whatever, to look at the unique hazards that returning students bring. But in the public schools, are there special things? Is there special testing that can be, is there a way that teachers actually look at every child when they come in, talk to every child about how they feel in the morning first thing, so you get at least a staff of teachers, not nurses? Is there a way to look at that? I'm not sure what the items here are. We certainly know that we maybe could give some assistance, maybe public, Alex, with his team of saying, can we do something to increase the pool testing? That when we talk to Nancy and say, gee, we got 50% of the kids are vaccinated, but only 1/6 of the kids participate in pool testing. That's a funny kind of number that you'd think you could, at the same 50%, at least I would think, that the same 50% would want to go along with pool testing. So I'm not sure of that group of things that are down there. I don't know what we could help you with, Stephen. It's the stuff is, I look at it as being, it's within your system just as much as Steve Griffin is sitting there listening, and from McDuffie's standpoint, that this stuff is within their system. And I'm just trying to look at this as a time to say, can we think about some different things that might help us that we're coming into. I guess my last one, I guess, goes to the Council on Aging. Is there something that we should be doing that we can help? Can the Board of Health help? Can we get our communication systems to help? So of all the people that are here, do we, and using this as the time to do brainstorming, so it's probably not very fruitful use of all of our times, but what is it is if you say this is an opportunity to reach out to somebody else that's listening in or asking, that it's maybe a unique time to say, hey, can you help with this, or have you thought of this?
So, Dick, if you don't mind, I can jump in. I'm 12 minutes out from a commissioner call that got thrown on our calendars yesterday. So I don't know what that is going to be, but we were on a COVID testing webinar yesterday, Nancy and I, and we're working to, we're doing exactly what you're suggesting we do here internally, having some of those brainstorming sessions. We met with nursing teams and leadership at both schools today and started to put in place plans for the return on January 3rd. In some ways, we're fortunate that as of January 3rd, we will have nobody in test and stay, because they wouldn't be in school close contacts if they were if they were exposed. So what we're saying, we have a message going out tomorrow, we have a message going out next Thursday, and the same message going out the following Sunday, that if you're exposed or considered a close contact during the break, you are not to send your kid to school on January 3rd. Contact your primary care. You can certainly contact the nurse's office, but they're going to direct you back, because test and stay is for in-school transmission. So we're getting that message out, trying to be proactive about that. Our plan is to pool test everybody in our pools those first few weeks back and trying to increase. I am having conversations with unvaccinated staff right now. We don't have a policy in place, but I'm having personal conversations to see if they're willing to consent to pool testing. Especially, we're kind of considering this like part of our, and we're flying this plane as we're building it, but part of our surge protocol that unvaccinated staff, we're gonna, encourage staff to take the test. If we get resistance, the school committee, the policy subcommittee has had some conversations about a staff vaccination mandate. And if it doesn't mean that they would lose their job, but that would mean that they have to participate in weekly testing, which could be pool testing if they're not vaccinated. And a couple other things you mentioned in terms of athletics. The school committee voted last week at my recommendation that we are only allowing home fans into our games so that we can, make a good faith effort to get that 6 feet of distance in the gym. At least families can stay together and then separate a little bit more. And, so we've pushed that through, and that went into effect. And I think, Kevin and I have talked about that too. Part of it does become the enforcement of it, but so far we've had some success around that. And even last night, you might shudder to think that we had a band concert, and don't worry, it wasn't a concert like you might think it was a concert. There was about 50 people total. We spaced them all out 6 feet. Each band member could only have 3 attendees, 3 guests attend. So we're trying to be proactive while also balancing. I think about the article that Herb sent out earlier today around not closing the schools. And one thing that's not really in there is there's certainly some social emotional stuff around there, but the extracurriculars, how much students lost in terms of athletics and band and things in the past few years. So we're really trying to be thoughtful about how we balance giving them those opportunities to do that this year in a safe and healthy way, because we do feel like they have lost so much, and it's a delicate balance. I'll admit it. But we have students who could have opportunities for scholarships through athletics that they missed out on their sophomore, junior year last year, that coaches weren't able to see them, which impacts families in different ways. And so we want to be proactive. We're, like we've talked about in the past, Dick, even for basketball games, we have the doors in the gym open. We're running those fans during games. Referees aren't always happy about that, but those are the things that we're trying to be proactive with. And then, the elementary school is, excuse me, rethinking their lunching configuration for when we return. So instead of having 90 kids in a lunch, having 45 to 60 kids in a lunch, so that we can get that 6 feet. DESE is not mandating that right now, but that's that magic number, which would reduce the number of close contacts for us at least. So we're trying to be forward thinking. And I mean, obviously, if we're open to feedback and ideas, but those are some of the things that we've been talking about the past couple of weeks and planning to implement as we transition back from the break. But I think one of the most important things was the first thing I said, messaging incessantly to parents that if you're a close contact or you're not feeling well over the break, don't come to school on January 3rd.
One of the things that our board hasn't pushed on, but it's certainly kind of a hot button for me, is that when you look at optional extracurricular activities and say, gee, when a child really wants to play that and says, oh, this is really important, but not important enough to get vaccinated to play it, and say, gee, when you choose not to protect you and your teammates and your other team that you're playing, that doesn't fit with me saying, boy, we have to protect this kid's rights. And so that's one of the things certainly that I feel strongly about, is requiring children or students who participate in athletics to be vaccinated. And
Well, Dick, if you remember, I talked about consequences early on.
you
There
did.
have to be consequences to these decisions. And without consequences, these are lame things that we bring up. Lame. We've got to have some consequences.
I agree with that. And saying you can't play if you don't get vaccinated is a consequence.
I would totally agree with that.
So, Stephen, maybe you can, it looks like it's not today that this board is going to do something like that, but maybe you could be talking about to your students and to the school committee and say, hey, the Board of Health is really serious about this thing, and we ought to get on with it. Steve.
Yeah, I just thought I'd jump in for a second because we've been considering this a little bit, and the thing I'm worried about with it, of course, are students who declare religious or deeply personal held exemptions. And again, I would rather require a crowd to be vaccinated or have no crowd whatsoever than have a student who's declared that exemption for our Board of Health to challenge that. That's been a worry for us. The other is just the enforceability of the masks in the gym on the team. If you see that game in particular, basketball, 30 seconds into playing, they're protecting their chin only. And, it feels as though, it's a tough time to be asking for rules to become more lenient. So we're not looking at that right now, but the question becomes, if your whole team is vaccinated. Our team right now is going away and playing away games maskless in other towns and coming back into our school and then playing home games, about to start playing home games. We haven't had one yet where we will require masks of the opposing team, and that the opposing team be either vaccinated or recently tested. So we're struggling. And the same thing with the theater, struggling with having a student who, we don't really view it as extracurriculars. You view it as part of your whole academic program. And so a student who wants to act, I'd rather have, the crowd stay at home or stay further away than have a student with a religious exemption not able to participate. Interested in your thoughts on that.
Well, in conversations with Andrew Parker, certainly coming to the board to ask something, but I could go and come up with a stand that I'm sure Stephen's got the same issue, and he's going to have to leave us in a second. You could go and say, gee, we've got 90% or 95% of our athletes or whoever, your extracurricular people are vaccinated. Can we behave in a way with these guys? But if the people that are not able to be because of legitimate reasons, certainly the available of testing looks like it's going to really, really increase. So maybe someone would come up with a plan that says, you know what, when they're in a spot that they're playing and not vaccinated, we'd like them to be tested before the game, or something to say, how do we provide some protection to rights and others both? But you haven't asked us, and the board is open to anybody asking us for anything.
I'm sorry, but I do have to go. I
Yeah.
agree with Steve, some of those challenges too. And I think too, like at this point, you're in the middle of the season, even getting students to get the vaccination by the time it's all said and done. But I mean, it's conversations that, we can certainly have but in the meantime, we're going to continue to put the preventative measures in place that we have. And we feel, I spoke to our staff this week and said, I'm confident in the measures that we have. And I think overall at the schools, they've been successful. Are we seeing cases? Yes. Will we see more cases? Yes. But we're finding 99% of the time it's coming from the outside. We're catching it fairly early. And we've maybe been fortunate in that way, but I feel like we have some processes in place and, they've been a success in many ways to date. Could they be improved? Of course, always. But I appreciate the time and conversation. Nancy's on, I know, so she can catch me up on anything I might miss. I hope everyone has a happy holiday.
Thanks, Stephen. And Steve, I think you probably feel the same way about McDuffie, that your numbers are great numbers. So if you look at the things that are in place, they seem to be working. But before we go, we certainly, it sounds like Council on Aging is examining what they're gonna do. But we have Alex over here, and is there something that you guys would like Alex to do? Of course, we've missed Stephen if he wants to, so we can certainly go back, and the Board of Health doesn't have to be the group that tells Alex what he should be doing. Everybody can reach out to Alex.
Absolutely.
From the Board of Health standpoint, Herb and Lee, are we at a position of, there is an item, it's a Board of Health item. And it does, unfortunately, Nancy's here though. Like I don't see her on here, but anyways, we have got a letter. Herb, I don't know.
Here, Dick.
Okay, Herb and Lee, I don't know if you've read the letter, but it's from Peter White. Essentially, he's made some statements that I don't believe are exactly correct, but he's asking the Board of Health to intervene in the school system. And he has stated that it says that the administration is sticking with SE guidelines, so I'm reaching out to the Granby Board of Health. My concern right now is that when a vaccinated student is identified as a close contact of a confirmed case of COVID, he or she is asked if they have symptoms, and if they don't have them, they're sent back into the classroom without a test. On the flip side, an unvaccinated student must get a test to re-enter the classroom. So the issues here that it sounds like if you become a close contact, you get a test, and away you go if you're unvaccinated, which I know that is not what Test and Stay does. But what he is asking is that close contact vaccinated students be required to do testing. Now he is looking at this as a one-time test at some time as soon as you've determined the student's a close contact. And in reality, we certainly know that you don't necessarily, just the fact that you test for a week with the close contacts of unvaccinated, it's because it's not one instant. But from the Board of Health standpoint, when I looked at this, Herb and Lee, I guess Nancy can say something too, is that I view as the bigger problem with students who are close contacts is that the fact that you've got half of the students in there that aren't vaccinated and bringing this disease in, as Stephen said, that it is not an in-school transmission issue, and that, so I think Donna is there too, who's working with the same system. It appears to me what I'm hearing from Nancy and Donna is that these close contacts aren't ending up being positives. They end up getting cleared. So that the CDC guidelines, although Mr. White says that's not the case, but the CDC guidelines, at least the last time I read it, was that if you are a vaccinated person who becomes close contact, you are not isolated, but you have to be monitoring yourself for the 14 days to make sure that you don't get symptoms. And essentially, I don't know, and maybe Nancy can tell us that in the schools is they haven't had many fully vaccinated close contacts. But now that we're getting them, do they end up saying you become a close contact and you just have to do self-monitoring? Nancy, is that what you end up doing?
So we contact anyone who's vaccinated or unvaccinated, letting them know that they are a close contact. As long as folks are symptomatic and vaccinated, they can remain in school, but we are offering test and stay should they choose. We've had, we know that's kind of superseding the state guidance, but we are providing that extra layer of protection for families. We've had most families are opting to do that. Some are not, and we're respecting that. And then regardless of, those obviously were unvaccinated or doing test and stay should they choose to, or quarantining, with both groups, regardless of vaccination status, monitoring for 14 days from the last date of exposure for symptoms.
So my question, Herb and Lee, is that this has come into the Board of Health asking for us to intervene and force a more stringent requirement than the CDC standard. Do we want to do that? I don't.
I would respectfully decline that.
Herb, what is your thought?
I think the new variant is incredibly infectious for vaccinated and unvaccinated people. So my first response would be, if you're a close contact, you should be offered rapid testing. Actually, you need PCR testing then. You should be offered testing to see whether you're positive, whether you've been vaccinated or not, because vaccinated people get infected. So that's my first impression.
Can I just make a quick statement? We don't provide PCR testing in schools except for pool testing that gets sent out to the lab. When we do test and stage, just antigen testing. So just so you're aware of that.
Okay, well, at least antigen testing then. Yes, I think that probably ought to be done.
Are you saying it should be ordered, or you just advise? So
no, I'm giving you my impression. You asked for that. I read this letter, and I tend to agree that since people get infected, whether they have been immunized or not, if you're a close contact, you ought to have a test to say, no, you're not infected.
But the test, or just so we're talking the same thing, that it's actually the test and stay, which is numerous tests. And I certainly, if you look at going further than what you just said, with the Omicron, with finding out that we don't even know the resistance of a child, a fully vaccinated child to Omicron, we don't know it at all. That to recommend that all close contacts be handled the same way. The question then, it goes one step further, is that the test and stay tests and allows you to work in the school environment, but you are quarantined in the non-school environment. So do you do the same quarantine for the vaccinated student, or do you tell Nancy, or, and I have no idea whether Steve is doing that out at McDuffie, if they're doing test and stay. But there's another way to do it that says, yeah, everybody ought to be doing the testing, but that the vaccinated person isn't quarantined. Urban Lee, what do you know, I've gone Herb over onto your side with, and I shouldn't say your side because it's not a side here. It's some thoughts. That's why we do this. We talk. And you're thinking of especially with Omicron, and it's coming at when we start testing again, it's going to be some Omicron in there. And after vacation, that
There's probably going to be a lot of Omicron, Dick.
yeah, a lot is right.
What we hear, it's going to be a lot of Omicron. And I would just pose one other issue to Steve for a moment to think about, as I'm trying to think about it as well. People who request religious or other exemptions come from families who have like-minded views and may well be, in fact, more susceptible to getting infected than those people who have, in fact, been immunized. Just a point for us to think about as we try and accommodate those with religious exemptions.
So do we, just to help Nancy, I don't know, as you're listening, Lee, whether you're changing your mind on the CDC. I'm still at the point that I don't want to mandate from the Board of Health that the school has to behave in a certain way. I'm pretty comfortable.
Well, yeah. I agree with that, and I don't know that we have the authority to even do that.
I'm not either, but
they've already got policies and procedures in place. I know they're doing the best they can do given the situation. And I don't know that us trying to make it more stringent is going to be in anyone's best interest.
But if we recommended to Nancy that we treat all the all the close contacts the same way. That she does the testing, the daily. The problem is Nancy's staff is not looking for more tests to do. But if you treated everybody the same way in the testing, and I don't know how it's going to come out. It's the Omicron. What I'm hearing is that its incubation period is somewhere half of what the Delta is, and it looks like its duration is like 4 days. But anyways, that if we went with an answer to this letter, certainly this board could recommend to Nancy that all close contacts be handled the same way.
It seems to me, Dick, that it's illogical not to, in fact, treat them all the same.
Well, the CDC says that and DESI says that you don't.
I understand what the CDC and DESI says. And as you well know, the CDC has changed its policies any number of times. All I said to you was, to me, personally, it seems illogical.
So I could support asking Nancy to handle vaccinated and unvaccinated close contacts the same way. I could support that.
Well, I could support that as well.
Lee, how about you?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Underneath.
Then Nancy, it looks like we're going to ask you to do that. The board didn't order it, but we're going to ask you, and I'm going to guess you're going to come back and say, we tried this and it worked or it didn't.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
If families decline, they still have that right to decline if their kid is vaccinated. Is that my understanding? We're not.
It means they can't go to school, right?
If they're vaccinated and showing no symptoms under test and stay for DESI and they decline to do the testing, they can still be in school under their protocol. So I'm just trying to make sure that I'm understanding, if a vaccinated asymptomatic student declines to do test and stay, they can still be present in school with this ruling.
To be consistent with what I believe we just asked, it would be that if you won't get tested, then you don't fit into test and stay. But it's interesting because that goes back to what Lee says about what the protocol is.
Dick, I'm not sure that every eventuality can be covered. And for the unusual family that says our youngster has been immunized and we refuse to have them tested, well, what can I say? That doesn't make any sense to me. But there's a whole lot about this that doesn't make any sense. So we're not going to be able to get 100% logical response to this without becoming draconian. And I don't think we ought to do that.
I support that 100%. Or if we're going to pick up a 90 or 90+% improvement here, and not stick Nancy into a spot that she's violating a DESI regulation, but we're going to get a huge potential improvement that we go to Nancy and say, yeah, we're asking you to do this, see if we can make it work, and don't be slamming the door on anybody. And I agree with her that the parents that had their kids vaccinated care enough about their kids not getting sick that they're going to be interested in this too. So
Can I make
We're
a quick
all-
statement?
all- We're
not
all
quite, yes.
trying to make the town, our schools, and everyone else as safe as possible. That's, I think, what ought to be the objective.
So Nancy, in answer to your question, what we're saying is we're asking you to treat all the kids the same. If the vaccinated asymptomatic kid parents says absolutely not, then you follow what the DESI and the guidance is. So you don't get in a spot that you're saying, how do I stand up to these people that say, hey, that's what these rules are? Where did you base that? And the Board of Health hasn't made an order. We just asked you to do that. Is that clear?
Yes, and we have been doing that. So that isn't really changing our current practice. Like I said, we are currently offering it to vaccinated and unvaccinated. But I just wanted to make it clear that if, a student is vaccinated and has no symptoms and declines test and stay, that they can still come into school based off of the DESI guidance. So you did answer my question. Thank you.
Peter, was that you that asked to speak?
Yes, it is.
Go ahead.
So, and I apologize for trying to go all these extra steps. For me, and I met with the school already and they had their stance. And my biggest concern is that we just have kids, again, walking in that are confirmed close contacts, and just because they're vaccinated and asymptomatic, they're automatically just sent right back to the classroom.
So that's not what's going to happen.
It is confirmed. I know for a fact, and I'm not sure how many times this happened, parents haven't even been notified. That is a concern also. Because a 14-year-old child or a 13-year-old child or 15-year-old child shouldn't make that decision. And the parent should be notified, so at least they can make that, at this point, make that decision for the child. But I'm also concerned that we're just letting them walk back in. And I understand Nancy's position that DESI has their stuff, and I've been emailing DESI weekly about this also. But
you just made a big step forward, Peter. So that, and Nancy has got a protocol, and I know that protocol says that the parents get notified, and you don't tell a 14-year-old kid about it.
But parents have not always been notified. I just want to state that.
That may be. As Herb just pointed out, we can't get to be 100%. We've got to make some big improvements, and that's what we're going for, is a big improvement. And we're going to get, if we start moving in the world that we're dealing with 90 or 95% achieving what we're trying to do, that's a high number. And rest assured, when we come back from vacation, it's going to be a different world than we're in right now. There are going to be some different rules, but we don't know what they are. So it sounds like, Alex, that we don't have anything for you right now to be communicating. I think I got what I was trying to get out of the meeting. Unless someone steps in and says, hey, let's not end this meeting right now, I would suggest Herb and Lee that we call this an afternoon.
Dick, if you don't mind, we just want to say a few things that could help with spread that we've been doing. One is that we've always have been doing the UCC Sunday services every Sunday. We've been posting them on YouTube. We are currently filming all home games at the moment. And as you said earlier, if there is a department that needs to get the word out for stuff like this, especially COVID, feel free to reach out. My email is in the chat, and I'll put it in again just in case if anyone came on late. So I just want to make sure everyone knew that.
Okay, in fact, when I talk to the churches tomorrow, I will also remind them of that, Alex.
Absolutely. Dick, do you want me to drop off some business cards to the Board of Health if you want?
Sure, you can do that, Colleen. Of course, it's not going to do much good for this Christmas session because when we lose Colleen's face, she goes black today, we don't see her till Monday.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay.
But that's
Lee
it.
and Herb, are you ready to leave?
I move we adjourn.
You ready, Lee?
All set, folks.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you, everybody.